I'm going to go solo today because unfortunately, Kindra, my eminent co host, has got a family issue. So hurry back and we'll get her back. But for today's special guest, who we have today is Debbie Griffiths. And so, what we want to do is to talk a little bit about her and her background because you're not going to believe the story that she's got to tell. And that's what we're featuring here on The Aftermath. Experts and people who have got a story related to child custody, parental alienation, divorce, and most importantly, probably how do we heal? And this is The Aftermath. So, welcome to the show, Debbie. So glad to you be with us today. Thanks for taking out some time from your schedule.
Oh, thank you so much, Mick. Good morning to you and to everyone listening. My name's Debbie Griffiths, and I'm a native Californian, although I have lived in various aspects of this country. Mother of three wonderful children, two boys and one girl. And for the last 20 years or so, I have been in the homeowners association industry.
All right.
Started off managing various communities, anything from condominiums and townhomes, even mobile home parks, new development, and then worked my way more into supervisory positions.
Okay.
And and then the last couple of years has been great. I'm the director of education at the
Awesome.
California Association of Community Managers, where we actually focus on educating and certifying managers in this industry for the state of California.
I see. So, we've got a great story for you today, and Debbie has got to share this with you. So, if you can believe this, there is something to do with a tragedy. There is a suicide attempt and gaslighting. So, all of this packed into one show. Can you believe it, folks? But we'd like to know a little bit about your background in terms of you said you have three children,
Yes.
and could you tell us a little bit about them in relationship to especially what we're talking about here? Parental alienation is how does that impacted you and your family and your children?
Sure. I was married for like 17 and a half years and woke up one day in the psych ward in a hospital because I attempted suicide. And it was a result of being gaslit over the period of 17, 18 years. And gaslighting is a form of domestic abuse. And it's primarily defined as a psychological manipulation of a person over an extended period of time.
Okay.
And it causes that victim to question their own reality, their own thoughts, and even their own memories of things. And for many years, it was known as verbal abuse, and now the buzz term seems to be gaslighting. Um, and it actually kind of comes from the 1944 movie Gaslight with Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer. And this is a good example of the manipulation where the husband, Charles Boyer, keeps turning down ever so
Mm-hmm. Right.
little bit by little bit, the gaslights that are inside their home. And Ingrid Bergman is questioning this and thinking, well, is it me or is it the lights going
Sure.
down? And so he keeps telling her, no, that's no, there's nothing wrong with the lights, until it gets to the point where it's driving her crazy. So that's one red flag really of gaslighting. And it primarily occurs in personal relationships, interpersonal relationships, husbands, wives, maybe partner to partner. But it can also be seen in the workplace and even from a parent to a child.
So,
So,
having asked the definition, because that's really what I was going to ask, and you
yeah,
defined it. So, and it was so well, and also the illustration from a movie. So, if someone wants to go back and see the old time movie, you'll see exactly how it is. Phenomenal film, too, by the way, if you have
it
not
is.
seen it, so you should see it.
It is.
What could be done or what you could do to cope with something like this? So, first of all, I think you have to recognize it, which is what you've done, given excellent exposition of what it is. So, how did you recognize it? And what kinds of things do you think you could recommend that a person could do if they think this is happening to them?
Um, it took me a long time to recognize that something was wrong. I was actually a few things happened from a tornado occurring where my ex-husband literally left us alone to fend while a tornado actually hit in our neighborhood, um, to getting really sick myself. There was just a combination of a lot of physical things that was impacting me mentally, emotionally as well. And it was just a vicious circle. So one day I finally broke down and called my mother. This was another aspect of me being gaslighted, is that I was totally isolated from family and friends. So I had very limited contact with my family. And so one day I just broke down and called my mother, and I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm not happy. And, started telling her some things as to why I wasn't happy.
Right.
And she broke down and she said, I have been praying for this phone call for many years.
Oh my.
And I said, what do you mean? And she said, we've suspected that there was some,
Hmm.
that he was too controlling,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't know all of the details. And at that point, my mother still didn't even know all the details, because I was like, the roll top desk with the pigeonholes.
Sure.
For all of those years, I was taking all of these things and kept stuffing them into those pigeonholes
Mm-hmm.
until one day there was no more room. And fortunately, I started getting help. And, the doctor told me about being codependent tendencies. And that's, defined me to the T. But as I started getting bolder and speaking up with my ex and explaining, hey, I'm not happy. And, this is, I'm not happy in this marriage. And here's some of the things that why. And he basically said, that's my problem, not his. And one day there was, as I say, it was perpetual of a lot of things that were snowballing. And I was sinking further and further into a major depression with suicidal thoughts. Did attempt suicide, woke up in a psych ward, and the doctor said, your environment is making you sick. And so I still had, when you're admitted to a psych ward, you have 72 hours. So at that point, it was 24 hours. And I knew I had 48 hours left. And just hearing those words and making the decision, I need to get out of this marriage,
Mm-hmm.
was liberating enough for me to start the process of rebuilding my life. Now, part of that decision um, involved my kids, because I'm laying there and I'm thinking, what are my kids thinking? What are they, what do I want to show them? And I decided that I wanted to show them that they had a mother who loved them and that cared for them and is strong. It's in to overcome this. And I did not want them to be further victimized, nor did I want them to learn the traits to be victimizers themselves. I
Mm-hmm.
made it a point that the abuse was going to stop with me. So that's takes me to that point. And then getting more into the parental alienation and the impact of the kids. Well, it did impact them as well. The divorce, my oldest one, there's 10 years age difference between my oldest and my youngest.
All right.
So I was living in Georgia at the time, and that state said that anyone 14 or older could make the determination as to which parent he could live with. So my oldest one chose my ex. He thought that was going to be a bit easier for him. Um, and so I took the other two, and there was the typical arrangements of, Wednesday nights we'd swap off, and I'd have dinner with the oldest one, and he'd have dinner with the other two, and then every other weekend type thing. It didn't work out really very well. When you're dealing with someone who was later defined by the kid's psychiatrist as narcissistic, they don't tend to want to follow any rules. Rules aren't meant for them. So it snowballed, and then my oldest one quickly was being alienated from me, and my ex would say that he didn't want to see me, and it was heartbreaking. I could have left right then and there after the divorce to move back to California because that's where my support system was with my family. I chose not to because I did not like the separation that the divorce decree allowed with one child with one parent and the other two with the other parent. I was still trying my best to have some sort of family unit, especially where the kids were involved.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed and still put up with some shenanigans, for lack of anything else, until my oldest one was 18, decided to go away to college. And then at that point, I knew he was out of the house because he was still being alienated. My ex made at every opportunity would be, berate me, to not only the oldest one, but to the other two as well during their visitation. And it got to the point where even if I tried to call the oldest one, he wouldn't want to talk to me. And that went on for years, even after he went away to college. Um, very little communication. The alienation was pretty strong because he felt he owed his alliance or allegiance rather to his father. And it's heartbreaking. And all I could do was number one, keep praying. Um, prayer has my faith is what's gotten me through all of this and would continue to, God takes care of me and watches over me every day. Firm believer in that. But the other thing is I chose to be consistent in that, once a week I would at least make the attempt to call. Sometimes he answered, and if he answered, it's like, hey, how are you? How are things? I'd maybe get one or two word responses, didn't belabor the conversation, just say, okay, I'm just checking in, talk to you next week. And for probably like the next 10 years, it was like that. Um, I did at one point in time move back to California to rebuild, a life and help the other two at least heal from the trauma. In the meantime, still staying consistent with my oldest one and with the weekly calls, weekly check-ins. And it finally got to the point where he started talking more, and he would start calling me. And so that over the next few years, that improved, that at least that phone call
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But Mick, it wasn't until just a couple months ago when I went back um, to see him for his 40th birthday. And it was 15 years since I had last seen him. And it took total of 25 years for him to get to the point of from total alienation to now accepting me, back in his life. Um, I couldn't be happier, but it's a long haul. It was a long haul.
Mm-hmm. What was the impact on your other two kids? And could you talk a little bit about the parental alienation, the relationship between father and the two others, since they were more or less separated than obviously if they were with you that whole time?
Yes. So when I was still in Georgia, and that was a period still like another 4 years, even after the divorce. So there would be the visitations. There was a couple of really rough visitations where, some accusations, inappropriate touching, for example, was being thrown out there. I tried to get the police involved, and they wanted nothing to do with it. So at one point in time, when I finally moved to California, that was kind of like a breath of fresh air for the three of us, because they were continually barraged with horrible comments about me. And so it was almost like another year before he would he popped back into California unannounced. He had remarried at that point and literally barged into the doctor's office, psychiatrist's office that I had the kids seeing because my goal was to help them heal as a family unit. Let's move past that. Um, Once she started seeing his behavior, she finally understood, because her goal at first was, well, we need to rebuild the family and stuff. And I'm like, did you listen to anything that I've said up to this point? Um, this is not his intent. His intent is to further destroy what he can destroy. But after he barged into her office unannounced, no appointment, um, apparently wasn't very too pleasant with her. She finally kind of said, okay, I see what you're saying. So she did try to work with him and say, hey, you have got to stop with berating their mother. You're further alienating yourself from them. Not, if you're trying to make her the bad guy, you're failing miserably. So I don't think he never really got that. And the kids, my daughter was the youngest. She was 4 at the time when we separated and divorced. She probably had the least amount of effects or impact from all of this. Certainly she saw some things that she shouldn't have seen, and heard some things that she shouldn't have heard. But my middle child, he had a hard time. He exhibited a lot of anger issues, to the point of even, putting holes through the walls, pulled a knife on me one time, um, and went down the drug road, the illegal drug road. And I tried to get him help, I tried to intervene, get him, into rehab twice. And so and he dropped out of high school on top of it, which was totally heartbreaking for me. That's not what I envisioned my children's life to be at all. Not, when they're born and the nurse puts them in your arms, you get that warm and fuzzy, and you think you see all that their future in such a positive light.
Sure.
And so he went down the illegal substance road, and to the point when he turned 18, he was back on it, and I knew I needed to protect my daughter. She did not need to see that. She did not need to be, impacted at all by any of that. So I made a very tough decision, and I kicked him out. And that was probably harder on me than it was on him. But about 3 months later, I got a call from the sheriff's department at 2 in the morning. Went down there, and apparently he was living with another friend. They were both doing drugs, and apparently a drug deal went down bad. And so he wasn't arrested or anything, but the sheriff said he's still high. And I'm like, okay, I can't take him home, and I gave him the whole scenario. And he said, he goes, yeah, I empathize with you. And I said, hey, I need to ask a question. I said, is there any way you could put him in jail overnight so I don't know what to do to get the fear of God in him, that he's, to get him to hit rock bottom. And he said, ma'am, I know what you're saying. And we used to do things like that, but the law's changing. We can't do that. So I said, okay. So at this point, it's like 4 in the morning. And so I said, well, we got to get home. And I said, you can come with me. You can stay, so let's just spend the night, get some rest. In the morning, I will take you to a halfway house. Well, the next morning I get up, and I'm looking out in the patio, and he's crying. And I'm like, okay. And so I go out to talk to him. And at that point, it was gut wrenching sobs that I've never heard anybody cry so hard in their life. And he broke. And he said, Mom, all of this time I have been angry with you, and I shouldn't have been. And I said, I know. And I said, your father, his parting words to me were, you will never make it, and no one will ever love you. And I said, he doesn't want us to be happy. So the best revenge is not getting angry and punching holes through the wall and doing drugs. The best revenge is figuring out what you want to do for your life, be productive, and be happy. So at that point, he decided to go into the Army. And he turned his life around, and he just recently left the Army after 12 years of service, but he did do a tour in Afghanistan and came home in one piece, thank God. And I couldn't be prouder. But it's a tough haul. It was a tough haul.
Is there something that you would recommend, because the difference in age seems to be pretty critical here, that has the least impact on your youngest, your daughter, and the greatest impact on your oldest, and then son in the middle? Are there things that you would recommend based on age, because you've really got a range there between the three children, on what you can do or what a person could do to get through this traumatic kind of event?
I First of all, I think get your family involved. If you have family support, encourage like family activities. Obviously get the get-togethers for the holidays. Create those memories, and keep the school involved in what's with the teachers. Be involved. I was involved in PTA, so I tried to go to the activities, as much as possible. Get them, get the school involved, involved where they can. And then, don't be afraid to reach out to professional help. Um, they There's a lot of testing that they can do, and it's not necessarily throwing people into medications or anything, but a lot of counseling, a lot of talking out their feelings, their process, their feelings. And because of the age difference, um, there's a different maturity level and
Mhm.
the level of understanding and the level of that they're able to communicate their feelings.
Mhm.
So and even their level of their understanding. And at this point, let's see, when my second son, when he was, I want to say around 18 or 19, he had a conversation. There was an altercation with his father, and basically he's not had any contact with him since. And I think my daughter got to be about the age of 20. He had sent an email that was a bit disparaging, and she didn't like the tone and even how he was talking to her. And so she really hasn't had any contact at all. She recently got married, be a year in December, and
Okay.
yeah. So she's doing well, and I walked her down the aisle. So she sees me both as her mother and her father. And my oldest one, just very recently, I want to say in the last couple months, he actually said, "Mom, I now know why you made the decisions you did." Now, I never ever expected any of my kids to say anything like that to me. Um, and to extent, it's heartbreaking because their father has missed out on so much. And really, the goal, even if two people decide to divorce, there's still kids to raise.
Mm.
And it was always my hope that we could co-parent. But
Mhm.
I was dealing with someone that had some other some disorders that couldn't properly co-parent.
Mhm. Is there any contact between father's new family and your kids? Is there a relationship between them, or would you recommend that there not be any contact? And how have you handled that situation?
There's been no contact with the two younger kids. The My oldest one has he still reaches out to his dad from time to time, but it's a very uh, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. So
Mm.
the relationship is seems to have deteriorated. Um, Again, maybe I'm just a little bit more idealistic. It Again, at some point in time, you as the adult, and if you decide to leave the marriage, then be the adult, suck it up, and be nice for the sake of the kids. Let them have that relationship with their other parent, and possibly that other family, as well. Um, there's room for love. Our hearts are big and can encompass a lot of love. It's just when it's very sad when hate seeps in.
Now, I've heard some details that I didn't know previously, and you certainly filled in a lot of gaps. But with all of these things that come down to this pretty phenomenal story, I would hope that you would be telling the world a little bit about this. Could you tell us something about this? Because I understand this now is in a book that you have put together. Is that right?
That's right. I decided a couple of months ago to write my story, and it's fiction, and it's really involves two women going through domestic violence. One has gone through it and successfully rebuilt her life. The other one thinks she may be going through it, and they have conversations, and what I'm doing through these conversations is outlining the red flags of, because some things can be very subtle and others not so subtle. And so that was the purpose of writing the book, is to outline the red flags so that either people who are not yet in a relationship can see these things so that they can prevent further heartache and heartbreak, and those who may be in a situation um, have the hope that you can do it. When I left, I was a stay-at-home mom. I went in as a had to find work after not working for almost 18 years, and got work and had to teach myself Microsoft Word and Office and all of those skills. Started up with administrative skills, got into the property management industry. I even put myself back through college and earned my college degree in organizational leadership. So it can be done, bit by bit. And I wanted to show that hope, because for a lot of people trying to leave a domestic violent situation, on average, it takes 7 attempts before someone can successfully leave. And even while they're leaving, that is the most dangerous time for the victim, because it can escalate into more violent attacks, unfortunately.
Mhm. Could you tell us a little bit about the process of writing? Because this is probably a pretty major step. Have you done anything like this before? What's your experience of doing that? And why would you do this in the first place?
Well, the only thing I've really written is some industry articles, maybe like a page or two in a magazine. I actually did a lot of research and took a couple classes and learned about outlining, and really it was putting some of the events in an outline, and then going from there and write each chapter based on that outline. I decided to go the fictional route. Um, I think, is a way to make it a little bit more interesting, and bringing in like a subplot with another character in it, so you can see two different aspects. These are two women with two different ages, and two different walks of life. They happen to meet in a park, and while they're watching kids and grandkids, and it was just a way of kind of helping to educate on the red flags, and to see uh, just the ever so subtle flags of domestic abuse.
Mhm. So you've given us really a good description of gaslighting and a good movie to see, a great story, and packed it all into one place. So now I'm really curious because people have stories and they should be getting their story out there. That's what be featured on Aftermath. Could you tell us a little bit about this? A publication date? When could they get this? Is it available? When is it available? Tell us a little bit about that, because I'm sure now that people have heard the story, they want to read the story as well.
I certainly hope so. The publication is due to be released on October the 15th. I'm taking pre-orders now. I have a website up. It's called www.brokentoboldness.com. And I started a business, actually Broken to Boldness LLC. And the website has resources for help for anybody who wants to know more about any domestic abuse. There is a domestic violence hotline number that's on there. And for the purpose of this, it's 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE. So if anybody has any questions or needs any resources and stuff, this is an excellent resource for help. As I say, it's very scary when someone does make the determination to leave one of these situations. It can be life-threatening for them. So they can help. So the book is due out October the 15th. I'm very excited. It's called Torched, Burnt by a Gaslighter. And again, it's outlining the red flags of abuse and providing hope that you can successfully rebuild your life.
Yes, you can. That's one of the major goals of Aftermath. Debbie, thank you very much for your time with this fascinating story, giving us some details on the update and some great tips and ideas on how to handle traumatic situation. Thanks for being our guest today.
Oh, thank you so much, Mick. I so appreciate it. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much. You too. And if you've got a story, please let us know. This is the Aftermath, where you got a place for healing and how you can get through this. If you've got a story, we want to hear it. If you're an expert and can help out as well, let us know. We'd like to have you on the show. Take care. Have a great day. And Kindra, hurry back. We miss you. Day is full.